This is our text block. It is all the pages that are glued together. So when I'm referring to the text block, this is what I'm talking about. All right, this whole thing right here. I've got a couple measurements, a couple variables that I want you to keep in mind as well. This is A, and that is the height of this book. And then we have B, which is the width of the book. And lastly, we have C, which is the spine. So if you take a look at the diagram I have up here, the text block A, B, and C, that's what those mean. Our cover that we're going to make for this is A plus, right here, 6 millimeters. Why am I putting 6 millimeters onto this? Right, it gives us 3 millimeters in on the top and the bottom, which is roughly 1/8 of an inch, which is a nice size overhang to protect the pages of the book. And then B, I'm adding 3 centimeters. B plus 3. Why am I only adding 3 millimeters to this? Right, I only need the overhang on this side. We're going to have it butt right up to the edge of this, and then it's going to come around the edge, the back wall, the covers. So when we measure this, all of ours are going to be slightly different. Well, I don't know about that. We should all be really close, but just in case we have any differences in our measurements, we know what we're looking at here. So this is B plus 3. If I'm looking at this, it is 121 millimeters. 121 plus 3 is 124 millimeters. This side is 96. Is that right? 95, 96. So we're going to go, we'll add 6 to that, and we'll come up to 102 millimeters. Okay. So those are my measurements. Then I can bring this back. Now I can bring in my clean board here, my book board, and then I need to mark the grain. My grain is going this way. Remember, we want the grain of of our book board, and then also the grain of the covers to run in the same direction. Now I've got my measurements here, so I'm just going to come in all the way to 124 on this. Going to mark it again down here at 124. There's my line, and I'll start cutting it down that line to cut that piece off. Now I need to come down 102 millimeters. Mark that again down here. And cut that piece off. Now I'm just just going to do a spot check with this, matching up the back edge with the spine, looking to see if I've got those 3 millimeters the whole way around. Check that out. I've got about 4 instead of 3 on that one. This one looks like 3 and 3. Now I've got this one here. I'm going to write spine on this, so I know that that is the back side of the orientation of this bookboard. This is really important when you're working with dimensions that are really similar. So if you're working with the book that I was passing around earlier, that one has those sides were almost exactly the same. There's like 10 millimeters difference between those two. That would make a big difference if I glued one in this way and then glued the other one upside down or at a 90-degree rotation. They wouldn't fit. So I'm writing the word spine because that's where I want that to be at the end. I'm just going to write it on both sides. Then I'm going to line this up on my page on that leftover scrap. And we'll be able to get 2 books off of this. So I'm just going to trace that. I don't need to measure it anymore since I know that first one is in good shape. And cut that extra piece off. And then just put all your scraps off to the side so they don't get confused. Going to write spine again, just double check. Yep. And spine on both sides. There we go. And I'm just placing them here together just to double check and make sure that everything is measured correctly. And then I've got my 2 covers. All right, we've got our covers made. Now the next thing to do, and this is an optional part of this assignment if you are interested in doing this, is to add some sort of decorative element to the cover. And so what I'm going to do, you saw mine where I added something that was raised in it. This time I'm going to create something that I'm going to put a depression in it. So like it'll appear that it's debossed on that page. So I'm going to carve out, it's going to open up this box here. I'm going to trace my cover out on this box. I'm just going to match it into those sides. And trace around my box. I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to glue this directly to the box in a moment. So I want it to be the same exact size. I'm going to glue it to the cover. I want it to be the same exact size. So I'm just going to cut this out. And I'm just going to cut out a really basic shape here. Just using my straight edge so that I can mark these things out. Didn't quite get that one straight. There we go. So I'm just going to cut this shape out, just a rhombus shape here, trapezoid, whatever this happens to be. So it gives me a window. This, you could imagine that when I get, that this will cause the debossment here, give me a space to put a plaque on the book if I wanted to. So I need to get rid of some of these pieces here that I need to switch out my X-Acto blade. It's not very sharp. Then I'm going to glue this to the front of my book here. So take a little bit of glue. Actually going to, let's see, do I have, got just a little bit of sandpaper, because this is kind of a glossy surface. I should have drawn it on the other side just so that it would, I could glue that other, the paper side to it. So I just roughed it up just a little bit to sand it. You do not have to do that. And then spread the glue out. Just picking it up off the surface and holding it so that I can brush from the middle to the outside edges. And then I bring the brush back into the middle just so that I can spread that out. And once you have it positioned, go ahead and press it. There we go. Neat. So if you take a look at this, notice I just put my covers down. They're loose. Nothing is glued yet. Putting my book in between right here, which is the spacing in between that. I want to make sure that I have a couple inches all the way around. So if I bring this down and I just draw a line, bring this out over here, draw a line. I'm going to take these off. I'm going to cut this piece out so that I'm working with a smaller piece, a little easier to use. So I'm just going to cut this out at the moment. This is not, you'll notice as I'm cutting it, I am not being exact at all. These are horribly dull scissors, and they wouldn't give me a very good cut if I was trying to do an exact cut anyway. But I don't need it to be exact because I'll be trimming this down. So this is just sort of the roughing out stage of the bookbinding here. Now I've got a much easier piece to work with. So I'm just kind of eyeballing where everything needs to go, just so I have a good idea of where I can start. And for this process, we're going to start by gluing the cover that has your decorative cutout on it. And so I want to make sure that I've got enough space all the way around. This is why I've cut it a couple inches larger so I don't get caught off guard by having too short of a side and not being able to fold my book cloth around the edges. So I'm just going to start here with a line. This gives me a spot to start with. This is going to be where I glue that piece down onto the book cloth. So I'll take my cover, put a little bit of glue on it, and then spread that glue out. Make sure that you get glue inside your cutout. If it's a cutout, if it's glued on top and it's a relief, so it's standing out above it, above the surface, then make sure that you get glue all the way around the edges. So if there is a corner or an edge that's raised up high, that you get glue onto that, into that space. If you don't put glue into that space, then it's going to be loose because there's no glue to hold it. So make sure, and so then it won't hold its shape. So I would just spread the glue off all the way around the edge. Going to line it back up onto those lines that I marked. Going to make sure that there's no wet glue on my fingers. Then I'll turn this over, and I'm going to start by burnishing in that spot or around the decorative element. Pushing the book cloth up to those edges. If you're working inside on something, then push it right, then you're going to push on the inside of it, give that book cloth a nice crease. I can actually see the glue being pressed out of this. It creates kind of a bubble. I'm just pushing it until the glue inside that divot that I've created gets pushed out, and then start creasing in those lines. So the more decorative design element you've added to this, the longer this portion here will take. And then once you've got that all smoothed out and pressed in, then press all around the corner of your cover, making sure you get all of the corners pressed in and all of the edges pressed. Using your bone folder to do this. And then you can come back in. Now notice I'm not using the pointy edge of my bone folder. Some fabric, especially if it's a knit fabric, will be a little more stretchy and will resist tearing. But if you push in too hard on with the sharp end of your bone folder, it could tear your book cloth. So just kind of keep that in mind, to be soft around those. Give you enough pressure to push right into those edges, but not enough to go through your cloth and your book and the book board, the book paper on the back of it. And before we can glue down the other cover, we need to make sure that we have the proper spacing here in between these two. So I've measured this right here, and I have at the thickest edge 18 millimeters. I'm afraid with is that my book cloth isn't as stretchy. This one here, the example I showed you, this was a t-shirt material, and so it's pretty stretchy. This stuff here is more of a cotton, and it's not as stretchy. So I want to give myself just a couple millimeters. So if you have stretchy material that you're using, then you can just use the exact measurement of the spine. If your paper isn't stretchy, so if you pull on it and it doesn't feel like it's stretching at all, then give yourself 2 millimeters on the edge. So I'm at 18. That means that I'm going to measure out 20 millimeters from that cover. Let's move myself out of the way. Right here. Right there. Then I'll finish that line. Now we need to make sure that these books, the covers are level. So the easiest way to ensure that is just to bring your straight edge right to the top of your book cloth, of that first cover you did, and draw a line that goes all the way across. And so then you know exactly where you need to match that book, that cover to the book cloth right there. So this is my binding was 18 millimeters, but it was not stretchy cloth. So I'm adding 2 millimeters in just to give myself a little bit of stretchy room. So I did 20 millimeters. Now, I'll just put some glue on this. Better put a little more on there. And then spread that glue out. Glue it down. Make sure that it's lined up. Make sure that there's no wet glue on your fingers when you turn it over, and use your bone folder. All right, now it's time to trace around the outside of your book cloth. I'm using a 15 millimeter spacer. That's roughly a ½ inch. So I'm just going to use my pencil. I'm going to trace these lines at the top of this. I want 15 millimeters the whole way around. I'm going to draw my corners here as well. If you don't remember to do your corners, all you need is you need 2 thicknesses of your bookboard. That is the width there to cut your 45-degree angles. So now I've got my book cloth. It's all ready to be cut out. I'm just going to cut right on the lines here. scissors are so dull. And for those of you who are ready to do this part, you've trimmed it down. You've got your 1/2 inch or your 15 millimeters all the way around. Remember, when we do our when we glue book cloth to our book board, we talked about this last week when we put a cover on our accordion books, is you start with the top and the bottom flaps first, and then you fold the sides in, the heads and the tails are. Now, when you glue this, I'm going to start by putting just a thin line of glue along that edge of the bookboard. I want to make sure that I have plenty of glue on the bookboard edge, as you can see here, so that the book cloth stays tight. It gets glued to the bookboard and it stays tight. It doesn't become loose. I'm just making sure that I have plenty of glue there. Then I'm going to put just a little bit of a thin line of glue along the edge and brush that out. Just making sure that the glue is evenly spread throughout. Also putting just a little bit of glue in the middle. Notice right here I'm hitting in between where the spine is going to go. We're going to fold that over. Be careful to keep your fingers out of the glue. And keep your bone folder out of the glue. This would be a good time to get before you start this, even get a paper towel handy so that you get glue squished out. You can wipe it off. Just using my fingers the whole way along. This is a pretty long spread here. I probably could have made it a little easier on myself and just put glue on one cover and done that, and then worked my way across. And press right here in the middle, press that down. If you can't get your bone folder in there, just use your finger to press that book cloth so that the book cloth gets glued to itself. And then I'm just going to use my towel to wipe off extra glue just so I don't smear it on anything by accident. Just to talk through that one more time, a thin bead of glue along the edge of the bookboard. And smear that glue all the way along the edge to ensure that there's a good adhesion to that between the book cloth and the edge of your bookboard. The lead edges of these covers is the same way, glued the same way. You just put a small bead of glue on it and make sure that there is a good amount of glue on the edge of the bookboard. Also, reach your bristles just into that little tiny gap where everything is going to be folded in, that little triangle piece over there, so that when you pull this in, if you watch what I'm doing here, if you've been having difficulty with getting your corners to match up the right way, push in just a little bit, just that tiniest little bit, and get that glued down to the book cloth. So you're gluing the book cloth to itself. To the side here, push it in so that it's folded over itself. That will keep the corner of that bookboard from showing. And then just another thin line of glue. Overlap just a tiny bit. Now, you'll notice here that I put just a little too much glue on mine. And so I had some glue that squished out over here. But it's low enough on my bookboard, like close and deep enough in, so when we glue the book, the text block into it, it will actually hide that. It'll cover that up so it won't even be seen. But I need to remember that this time as I do this, not to use as much glue into that corner so it doesn't squish out quite so much. I miscalculated on my corner here. Now's the moment of truth, the dry fit for your book. So, is this plus 2 or 3 millimeters? Yeah. So just kind of, if your cloth is stretchy, then give it 2. If it isn't stretchy, give it 3. All right. So if your measurements were true the whole way around, when you get this glued in, when you do the dry fit here, you should have a nice 3 millimeter spacing all the way around once you get that centered in. You want this. You want the back or the spine of your book as far back as you can get it, and still keep your spacing the whole way around. So kind of you've got a little bit of room to kind of adjust, to make some adjustments as you're seeing how this is actually going to fit together. Okay. Now, what we'll end up doing here is a 2-part glue. So I'm going to put some glue first of all on the book board, and then I'm going to brush that glue all throughout. Just get a good coating. And then I'm going to put the glue, the very edge here. I'm going to put that glue here. This will prevent me from gluing too high on my book board or on the book cloth and then causing a glue, like a stain from the glue. So this is just going all the way around, which is about the thickness of that book cloth, which is about a 1/2 inch rolled around. Then you place that back into your book, right about where you needed it to be to have the 3 millimeter margin the whole way around. You've got just a little bit of time to squish it around a little bit if you need to before it gets set. And that's what I'm doing right now, just kind of evening it out, making sure that everything is parallel. And then I can push that in, push down on that the cover, and get it set in tight. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the back side. Just going to put the glue. Actually, mine is just a little too tight, so I'm going to shave just a little bit of this off here of this of the book board, because I should have gone 3 millimeters on mine instead of just the 2, and it's bending my book board just a little bit. And if I had a really sharp knife, I could do a nice bevel right here. But this is on the inside and it's not going to be seen. You just need to be careful that you don't poke through your book cloth. Okay, there we go. Now, I'll get a little more glue here. And then a little bit of glue on those leading the edges of the text block. And then as you're pressing this is a time where you need to make double sure that you don't have any glue on your fingers while you're doing this. You end up getting any kind of glue on your finger, and then once you touch the book cloth, it's going to permanently stain it. So you want to make sure that your fingers are clean while you're doing that. Now, it's a little tight. Doesn't close quite perfect, but if I were to put this into a book press and press it down overnight, that'll fix it.